Okay, well, I'm Cal Hackeman from the Stretch Glass Society, and I'm so happy to have you, Kitty and Russell, with us. Longtime collectors of stretch glass, early researchers, early publishers, West Coast
Yeah.
collectors, which is different than collecting on the East Coast.
hmm
But we're happy to have you here talking a little bit about um, what happened once you got started collecting. Um, so you decided to do research and write a book. So
hmm
tell us a little bit about how did you do that? What was it like getting the companies to communicate with you
hmm
and get the information together for that first book on stretch glass?
Well, it's really interesting. We wrote to all the companies. First, number one thing, you go to the library and there's not much in the library.
Right.
And we saw all the Tiffany glass. And the Tiffany glass and the Steuben glass did not look really like the stretch glass. So then I started writing to Frank Fenton and the different glass companies and all. And this is before we knew anything about Dugan Diamond. And also Frank Fenton did not know about them. And a lot of the shapes of their glass and all are quite similar to ours. And in the beginning, when you don't know anything about it, we really thought it was similar. Of course, now we have experts that
Right.
count
So
the
we,
rings on it and all like
so
that.
you
But
had Fenton. Fenton was
mhm,
obviously still in business.
yes, Imperial
Who else
was
was still in business?
Imperial was still in business.
Okay,
Northwood was out, and Wheeling were out, of course.
right.
And
U.S. Glass was out or still
Out.
in business? Out.
well,
Okay.
they were still in business in the Tiffin factory
Okay, the
on
Tiffin
there,
factory. Okay.
but not most of the glass. Well, they made some of the glass, but they weren't very communicable.
Okay.
They weren't communicating very well with us
Okay. So
on
was
there.
Frank
And
and
Mr. Ehrman,
Mr. Ehrman at Imperial. They were
Imperial.
your primary
Mm-hmm.
helpers.
Yes.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And so tell us a little bit about that.
Well, Frank and Mr. Ehrman both were very good, and they would directly answer our questions, but they wouldn't offer anything.
Hmm.
We pried and pried and pried, but they were very nice to us and all, and we felt we had enough material. And being around the carnival glass people, we read up on Mr. Northwood,
Uh-huh.
who actually was Mr. Fenton
Uh-huh.
on there, and we found that all of the glass companies around that were making iridescent glass, the main ones, all were related
Uh-huh.
on there. So we could do a little genealogy and work on that part of it.
So
And
in the first book, how many of the 9 companies that we know today made stretch glass? How many of those were actually identified at the beginning?
identified, we included them in the book, but we didn't know who made them.
Okay. So
On
you
there
included
was
the
main,
glass, but
yeah, there's lots. And
okay.
when you compare that book with Shetler's and Madley's book today, they're different
Yeah,
worlds
different world.
on
Different
there, but
world.
we didn't know.
But
But
what
we,
was the reaction when the book came out?
um, the people that collected stretch glass, and there was a small nucleus of us,
Okay.
we were really excited. And I should add in here that Barry Wiggins was doing independent research at this very same time.
Yes.
And we had technical difficulties with the book, getting it bound. And he came out with his book 1 week earlier. And we were shocked to see his book
Oh, so you
advertised.
didn't know he was.
And he didn't know anything about us.
Wow.
And when we came out 1 week later, he was shocked
Sure.
about
Sure.
it. And so
Sure.
we got together and we were very good friends on there.
Terrific.
And we had a wonderful time. But our Carnival Glass friends really were the ones that helped us. And like Don Moore and Carmavola and a number of other people loaned us a lot of glass. And Don Moore lived over in the city on Pine Street. And you parked on a hill like this, and I just knew the car was going to tumble over and over after we'd gone in and picked up his glass. And then we took it to Berkeley, where our printer, our publisher was, and the gentleman that was photographing our glass. And he lived up a little street called Marin Street in Albany. And you prayed every time you went up, because here's all the bicyclists coming down and you're going straight up this hill. And then we took them, and in the old days it took about an hour and a half to 2 hours per photo. And we included a number of pieces in the photo. Well, you're standing around, you're getting really bored about the pieces and all. And our photographer, like on the Fenton vases, he would clunk them to see if they rang, because he dealt in a lot of old glass. And of course, we named it the cowbell, because when you thumped it, it sounded like a cowbell.
Right,
and we had pet names for all these pieces of glass and all.
So the book came out. You had a small group. That must have been around the time that the Stretch Glass Society was formed, right? The Stretch Glass Society earlier. Okay.
Yeah, it'd be a couple of years earlier.
But you're charter members of the Stretch Glass Society.
Yes.
We were formed April 21st, 1974. Tell us a little bit about what it was like when you came together the first time and there were finally a group of collectors.
It was like heaven. People understood us, you know. They liked the same thing. They weren't upset because there wasn't a pattern on it.
Right.
On there. So it was really wonderful.
That was the beginning, I'm sure, of some long friendships, right? That went on for many years, and sharing of information back and forth. And so, would you say that was kind of a jump start in a way to sharing information and really beginning to build on the research that you all had done and that Mary had done, right?
Yes. And Rose Presnick was one of the founding fathers, and she had a lot to contribute. She had been collecting stretch glass as well as her carnival glass for years. So we had a lot of fun together, and then we purchased Rose Presnick's stretch glass collection from her.
So that guy gave you a nice jump start on a collection.
It did.
And so now we're, let's say we're in the 1980s. Now what is it like buying stretch glass? The book is out, so some people at least know what it is now.
Yes.
What's it like in the 80s to be out in the marketplace trying to find this stuff?
It's hard to find now. It's hard to find. The more unusual pieces, and of course we've already got all the common pieces.
Right. And by now, are we finding that carnival glass collectors are actually iridescent glass collectors, and they've got some of this stuff in their collections, right? And
they have been from the very beginning. That's one reason why we were allowed to join the clubs and all like that. And now we're carnival glass collectors as well as stretch glass collectors.
Right. So we just have a couple minutes left. I want to fast forward another 10 years into the 1990s, getting up close to 2000. What's it like on the West Coast then to be buying stretch glass? Well, it's kind of drying up because there's quite a number of us that were collecting in those days. And it was harder. Are being built up, right? Yeah, and unfortunately some people are passing, so we're allowed to purchase their pieces on there, but a lot of people, are you finding most of your pieces there, or are you finding them everywhere and having to have them shipped in at that point? Everywhere and having to have them shipped in. So definitely. One final question. It's now 20 years after that. Okay, here we are. It's 2017 when I'm talking to you. What's your advice to a new collector who's starting out today? What should they do? Join the club, number one. Join the club, number one, okay. And see what type of stretch glass that really tweaks their interest and research it and go from there. But number one is join the club. Number two is buy the books. Buy the books and then come to the convention, touch it, feel it, see it, experience it, right? And I know that's my own personal experience from getting involved in collecting glass or whatever. It wasn't until I could touch it and see multiple pieces of it together that I was enthused by it and motivated to learn more about it and whatever.
And I think one last thing, the Hooked on Carnival Glass, the e-newsletter, and you're writing in it one
And you're writing it in.
Tuesday of the month. We're writing in it. Dave Shetler's writing in it. And I think it's helping other people realize what they have and how neat it really is.
Yep.
And most of the Carnival Glass collectors, as you stated before, do have pieces in their collection, whether
Yeah.
they'll admit it or not.
Whether they will admit it or not.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the greatest changes that have occurred, as you explained, get the books. Don't just get the stretch glass books. Get the early Carnival Glass books written by Marion Hartung and Rose Presnick. They're getting more difficult to find. But as you go through those books, you will find a lot of stretch.
Uh-huh.
Now, in Carnival Glass, everything has a pattern name.
Right.
And you'll look in there and you'll see Marion Hartung has cut ovals candlesticks. It's a Carnival Glass pattern.
Yeah.
Yes? No?
Stretch glass.
It's stretch glass.
Right.
And she has a lot of things in there. Now, Rose Presnick has similar things in her book, and you can really tell because she was a good artist.
Uh-huh.
And so you can tell the details, but she had different names for all the things. There is a translation sheet between Hartung and Presnick. So we were fortunate enough to meet both ladies, visit them in their houses, look at what they had, and we communicated a one-on-one basis with glass collectors, glass manufacturers, CEOs, and the conventions you would go to, and then the conventions needed to have something more to kick them up a step, and that was the auction. That was the major thing that changed everything, was auctions. Now you've got auctions going on today, and almost everything is on the internet, and that's the number one change.
Mhm.
It's all on the internet.
It's all on the internet.
So the one-on-one communication you had with collectors in the early days, well, you do that over the internet.
Mhm.
And
So
so
we're gonna experience that with this interview, by the way, because this interview is going to be up on the internet. We thank you both, Russell and Kitty, for being here on the East Coast, where we're doing this interview at the Stretch Glass Society's 2017 convention, and we may pick this up again someday and talk to you
Right.
some more about some of the other stuff. But I know you're going to do a great talk for us tonight, and we'll look forward to that. So
Great.
thank you very much.
thank
And we
you.
want to
Being
thank you for all that you do for
Thank you.
Stretch Glass.
You're very welcome.
Mhm.
Thank you.